I want to talk about the view that I have on the nature of happiness and the nature of being and the nature of truly finding true contentment with everything. It's not something that can be founded straight away. It's something that gradually reintegrates itself into you. The reason why I say this is because we are living our lives searching for the very thing that is right here, which is very hard to perceive unless one has insight of its true nature. And so happiness, in my view, is always been there. You know, when you feel content, you're happy because you feel completely at one with who you are, completely at one with your nature. And when someone makes you happy, it's because they've brought out something that you like inside of them. That's all it is. People only bring out things that you like. That's what makes you happy. And so in essence, when you hear something you don't like, it's because someone basically affected you where you basically didn't want to be touched in that emotional criteria. So happiness in essence is indifference. Is indifferent, I should say. Because when you are looking for happiness, it means that you're not happy. And in other words, it means that you're not connecting to a part of you which is already there. And in so many words, the only true way to connect with that is to remember where it comes from. So, you know, people look for happiness because they look for the aspect of love. They look for the aspect of fulfilling a desire, you know. People smoke weed, you know. People take ayahuasca, iboga, people drink alcohol. People do all types of things. And those things are like substitutes to a place. They have an effect, you know. They have an effect where they activate certain particles in the brain, which basically allows you to see what appears to be happiness. But it's, you could say it's a taster because it brings you down in the end. Obviously, we do know that. So the taster is actually the perceiver of happiness, which is not actually it. And so people look for little substances that will take them to the next state. Those substances are actually a form which basically incorporates a degree. And so, you know, I'm not talking for them, but I'm talking for what I've experienced. And from what I hear from enlightened beings is that the state is so high that why would you want to turn back on something that is so low? And so in that case, it's a state. So people, you know, eat because they want to feel a particular state. You know, the necessity to eat obviously is important, but people want to have good food. You know, people want to have good experiences. And those experiences are actually stemmed from the states of consciousness, how your consciousness integrates those states. People go to, you know, talks and events. Wherever people go, they are searching for something that is already there. It's important to do those things because it allows you to take yourself out of the mundane. First and foremost, we have to remember that the state of consciousness is always there. You know, the only thing that we can do is become aware of it. And that's our true essence. You know, presence or the sense of present is always there. It's always in evidence, but we cannot perceive it when our emotions get entangled. Because the emotions make you feel that you're consciously aware of the space and feeling that you're experiencing. but it's a veil. It's a veil that blocks the truth. That's the one thing that we have to first, I feel, connect with. Understanding where the aspect which is veiling the self. And so enlightened beings talk about these particular states that we are searching for, you know, and from my understanding, they come in different states. You know, they come in different states because they have different degrees of feeling. And so the different types of states are actually qualified in the experience that you're experiencing. So, you know, you might be experiencing a sense of being high and happy all of a sudden. Then that state dissipates. Why did it dissipate? Why did it disappear? How do you bring it back? And most people try to bring those states back by having different kinds of experiences. They go to different places, do different things, but sometimes it doesn't come back until a long time, until one begins to realize that it actually is founded in a space which is away from others. The reason why I say a state that is away from others is because you first have to identify the love that you have inside of you. Because if you can't identify the love that you have inside of you, how can you identify the love that is in others? You know, because contentment is something that you feel personally. So you feel happy, it's you. It's not anybody else, it's you. So you are the source of that. And because you are the source of that, you have to look into that. What is the source that makes you trigger? What is the source that gives you inspiration? What seeds inspiration? Where does inspiration actually come from? How does one bring inspiration into being? Who brings you inspiration? Is it somebody? Yes, sometimes people can trigger you or inspire you towards that push. But once you're right in that state, only you can actually inspire yourself. Creativity is an inspiration within itself. To be creative, you've been inspired by something. And the highest form of creativity or the creative force is the sexual force. The sexual force, if utilized correctly, can be utilized to create. To create things that are of physical as well as spiritual by nature. Physical nature, things that bring out those natural senses would be anything artistic, whether it's musical, whether it's poetic, whether you're building or creating something. These are all manifestation of objects of sexual energy, which is actually manifesting itself in coordination with the elements that is inside of you, which is actually a trigger of love and a trigger of happiness, because you've triggered that inside of you. In order to bring that thing out, it needed to be pulled out from somewhere. Now, if you feel pain, the pain in itself is pushing you towards happiness, because no one wants to be in pain. Everyone wants to be happy. So the pain is actually the remedy which brings you back into that state. Now, to complete that, in reality, happiness is actually the in-between state. Because if you're too happy, then, you know, there'll be a point where you'll feel completely unhappy, because so you've pulled yourself to such an extent, like in the height of consciousness, where you feel contently peaceful and completely at one with everything. And then all of a sudden something just hits you and you're back at square zero. So if you're back at square zero, then that couldn't have been what true happiness is. It couldn't have been happiness in itself, basically. That's what I'm trying to say. Because it brought you back down to that space where now you're having to kind of just look into that. right? Where you're basically having to look into that and think, hold on, I was happy, but then I'm back at that same space. So it couldn't have been happiness. It probably was a swing of joy that you experienced. But true happiness really is contentment, is actually being in your own source, which is the balance basically between pain and pleasure. You know, pain and pleasure, you feel pain, so you want to gain pleasure. You feel pleasure, so you want to gain pain. You had too much pleasure, so now you're experiencing pain. So really, you now seek back the pleasure because you had too much, you know, substance or too much of an experience. You might have gone somewhere and gone out week after week, and then that pleasure now becomes, I'm bored of it. That's, you know. And one of the critical things is relationships. It's like, you know, you get into a relationship, you feel a particular way, you have the, what they call them, the honeymoon period, and then that fades away, and then you get into the real relationship. You start to meet the true person. And then you're like, oh, I like this, I don't like that. And then you feel that you're not fully content because you've experienced things that you don't like in that person that actually you don't like in yourself. And so perhaps you've outgrown it, and so you basically have to deal with that. So that wasn't fully happiness. It was an experience which led you towards a part of you which you enjoyed. Now, to find honest happiness is to be fully content, I would say, with every part of yourself, your shadow, which is the darkest aspect that nobody likes to look into. And so every part of that, if you can admire it and see it for what it is, you can find the brilliance of where happiness actually begins. Because happiness begins in your shadow. Happiness begins in your shadow because people try to run away from it. And the very thing that you run away from is always searching for you, looking for you, reminding you where you need to go. Because this is where everything stems from, in essence. And then looking into that, you can find the aspects of things that you don't like in you, the shadow aspect of you, the hidden aspects of you. Those key elements are the very source of your nature. And looking into that means identifying it psychologically, detectively, from a deepest aspect where you can fully integrate the deepest core and the deepest layer of your true sense. You know, literally digging into every aspect, parts that you don't like, parts that you like, strengthening parts that you like about yourself, but then working on aspects that you don't like about yourself. And the only way to do that is strengthening those strong aspects in yourself first, and then qualifying and understanding the nature of the very things that you don't like. And they're always bringing themselves towards you. And all you have to do is become aware of the subtle experiences that you experience about yourself. Because in there, you can find true peace, true contentment, true happiness. It's so. It's a place where you don't want to actually, or you don't need to do anything once you can identify it. The parts of you which, if you know what they are, we're talking about the parts that are, let's say, the shadow parts. When you know what they are, you can actually go into that and unravel the mysteries in why you feel a particular way. Now, going back into the shadow, again, so I make myself clear, because you know I've gone a bit away, but in it, the shadow aspect is the nature which allows you to see that true aspect of yourself again. And so when you dig deeper into those layers, you start releasing tension from the body, tension from the mind. You know, if you are always thinking, then what is it that you're not looking at? What is it that you're doing? Are you doing too much? That is your source of unhappiness, because you're looking for something again. That is the reason why your mind is running wild. You're looking for something that is already there. You're always looking for something that is always there. And so by looking for that very thing that is always there, you're actually finding unhappiness, because you're looking for the car. You're looking for jewelries. You're looking for a time or a place, a thing, a person. And so those very things are actually pushing you further away from the truth. And so you do need to go to those things, though. It's important for you to go and experience those things, because those things first make you know who you are. They allow you to identify your true self, because without the help of other people, you wouldn't know what to remedy within yourself. But once you find these things, you have to revert back to yourself. And to revert back to yourself is to realize that those things can't make you happy. Those things are only there to be appreciated, you know, to be experienced, to have a higher understanding of them. And so when you connect with them, you allow yourself to teach yourself about yourself in reality. So they are painful in the end. Every experience, if one doesn't transcend it, becomes painful. One has to transcend every experience that comes into one's plane of existence, otherwise it becomes painful. Nothing is permanent in what we find existence. And so if nothing is permanent, where are we looking for happiness? You know, happiness is permanent. You know, it's indifferent. It is. It is the source of truth and the source of reality. You know, the truth is that it's the real essence of who you are. And so you must go deeper. You must actually integrate and identify what is permanent and what is impermanent. You know, the body in itself is impermanent. It doesn't last forever. It will go at some point. You know, at some point you may experience some health difficulties, because the body has to decline in some ways. It doesn't have to. And if it doesn't, it's because you've found the true sense of happiness and you fulfilled the true nature of yourself, which is contentment. And that contentment brings joy. That true joy that we're talking about is not just having that joy, it's having the experience of fully knowing what it is that's inside of you without needing to search outside of you for it. You know, your duty is your life. Your purpose is your dharma. Your goal is to express, but your nature is naturally always there. Your nature is there, but it's to be cultivated. What I mean by cultivation is to be expanded. It's to be integrated to reach a higher states of awareness, higher states of compassion, higher states of love. Higher states of it is always cultivated. But the happiness is always there. But you can cultivate higher aspects of it, meaning that you can still go higher within itself to feel a deeper sense of what it actually fulfills. You know, to the point where it becomes infinite. It doesn't have any ending to it. And so in essence, it has no ending. Because in anything that has an ending means that there is a beginning to it, and therefore means there is a death to it. And so this is the true nature of looking at the very thing that has no death. What doesn't die is permanent, and what doesn't die is your true self. And that's what happiness actually comes from. And so one has to remember that in order to find the thing that will truly fulfill you, you know, because out of that, remember I said creativity comes out of that. But it can only come out of that once you understand what it is. Because only in happiness, in unhappiness, yes, you can bring things that are not there and bring them into fruition. But again, it goes back to that yin and yang. Only in true happiness can you bring out things that are truly there and actually feel content with what is truly there. Sadness is basically a loss. You know, I mean, everyone goes through some kind of sadness in life, and it's natural. You know, at the end of the day, it's natural to experience some certain experiences of sadness. But if you remember your core, nothing could touch your nature, because you can always transcend that and bring it to higher states of peace, higher states of contentment, higher states of realization. So, you know, that's something to bear in mind, because there's always a loss. And wherever there's a loss, there's a gain. You gain something when you lose something. Always. It always works that way. And so you have to be able to know what it is that you're ready to let go of. And you have to be ready to let go of that very thing. So desire is something that has to be experienced. Desire is something that has to be felt in order to be able to transcend it. If one doesn't complete or doesn't fulfill all those aspects of themselves, then one will only search for more. And for those who search for more, end up on the other wagon, where they have to feel the pain which comes along with wanting more. Wanting less is true contentment. Wanting less is happiness, because wanting less is first knowing why one wants to experience having less. Because if you're just doing like, oh, I just want to have less things, I just don't want to have much, I just want to have as much less things as possible, you first have to ask yourself, do you actually want to have less things? Or do you actually want to have more? You know? And another layers to that is, the moment you have less, you actually have more. You have freedom. You have the layer which allows you to move. Now, let us take the consequence or the realization that, you know, having less doesn't mean that you have to be homeless. You know, having less means that you're content in your space. You're content with what you have. You're content with the things that's in front of you. Having less is that, you know. Let's make that clear. You can be extremely rich, but still have less. You can give your finances to like a group, people, whatever, but you don't have to make that aware to anybody. That is a sense of contentment. You're content with yourself. You know that, you know, the first key of building happiness and strength in you is building your health, because health is the source of happiness. Health allows you to connect with your emotions and connect with your mental state of mind, because your mind is connected to your health. Your health will let you know where your mind will be, because that controls the body. Your mental health is controlled by your physical body until your mind reigns over the physical body. So one has to be fully contently aware of that in order to know that happiness starts from within, and the mind, the body, and the spirit is all connected as one. The external world appears to bring happiness, but it's only an integration of an attraction which is inside of you. The external world really doesn't really exist. The external world only appears to exist based upon the optical nerves that's triggering the eyes to see. What we see with our eyes are not actually our true lens. They are perceivers of realities which we see, but we've tuned into this reality which allows us to connect with this world, which basically connects us to this mundane world. And so we believe it to be our true world. But again, because it's lunar by nature, it's an emotion, it's an emotion which is always changing, and it is basically controlling ourself, which is not allowing us to see beyond this realm. This matrix has 7 portals of light, and those 7 portals of lights are integrated with the 7 spectrums of the chakra system, which is in connection to our vital field of our luminous bodies, our chakras. And so those are actually the points which need to be understood. By releasing karmic ties in those physical parts in our body, we're able to basically feel and see the true nature of this reality. By removing blockages, removing tension from those cells, we're able to see our true nature, our true potential, our true keys. And these are layers that needs to be broken down in the physical body, because we're not able to perceive our true nature until we still those light movements. All those light movements are actually breaking us away from our true nature. But in order for us to first see that, we must rise above. Now, to rise above now when you look at the light codes, the 7 chakras, the highest obviously being the ultraviolet light, or the white light, which is the crown chakra. And the ultraviolet light, some say the third eye, some say it's the crown. The crown is more gold, I feel. You have to transcend those lights. You have to transcend those elements of yourself, which is beyond the physical. And so, but in doing so, you also have to find the grounding nature of you, which is rooted in the root chakra. Which is the connection between our desires, because it's what keeps us grounded. So the root chakra can be associated with the color brown or black as opposed to red. Red is the movement of blood, so it represents life. So hence why the root chakra will be connected to life. But the truest root is brown or black, because it's the soil. It's what the soil is composed of. It's dark matter. It's carbon. It's it's electromagnetics. And so once you can transcend the light and still remain grounded, so you transcend the lower spectrums of light and bring the highest of lights, which is obviously the ultraviolet light. And so the ultraviolet light connects you with your highest true nature, which is connected to the source of yourself. And by doing so, you're able to see the mundane world for what it is. So in essence, it's about living in this world, understanding the spectrums of lights in this world, but still transcend your lights to other realms, where you see other light codes, other light transitions which are not associated or connected to this realm. And so when you're able to do that, You're able to see your true self. You're able to see, you're able to feel what is not from just the optical nerves in the eyes. Because obviously the optical nerves in the eyes create light, which is in the brain and formulates this world, which you see today with your eyes. So you have to remember that. You have to remember that you see with a different layer of you. And so how you see someone is literally how you perceive them. And it's not how they actually are, how they actually look. They actually look completely different from what you think that they look like. Just like some people are colorblind, and being colorblind is actually a sense of the optical nerves again working in a different way to basically connect light code in a different format. And so you have to look into that as well. What creates that light? How does this light formulate in the same manner that they integrate light, or how they think of light? Because the nerves connect you with the complex aspect of the mind, which is actually the core key or the core essence of where life transcends. Because the nerves, the nerves are connected to the movements of reality. And so the life force, which has the relationship to the dantian, which is the stomach, lower stomach area, has so much complex nerves which connect you with your gut feelings, and those nerves are then triggers to higher states or higher consciousness, which are light code informations which are being transmutated or felt into the cortex of the physical nerves, which are then felt in the body, obviously, and then connected to higher realms or heavens. Because the very nature of Earth, or the very nature of what we see, is actually nothing more than subtle light nerves that are moving away from us, which are connected to us, experiencing themselves as an energy or atom moving in correlationship to the reality that you're interacting with. So the earth, or your physical nerves, are interacting with those subtle nerves, atoms and molecules, which then reconnects you into your being, which then allows you to trigger those nerves through the gut feeling of the stomach, which has the most complex nerves, which has more nerves than anything else. And you know, they say our stomach is actually our true brain, and our brain is our mental capacity, because our stomach represents the lunar nature, which is what holds us on this planet Earth. Earth is actually water more than it is physical. So you have to look at the stomach as the source of where the ocean is, because there's more water in the stomach than anything else, than anywhere else. Although with 98% water, there's more water in the stomach, and the stomach holds you know, it holds the water aspect of us. So you know, we can evaporate this water and we can utilize this water as well. And depends on how we connect with the specific layers of life force. And so we can evaporate that, and we can condense that and create more water, and connect with more oxygen. And so those connections are integrated with the outer world and the outer experience that we're feeling. So going back into happiness, happiness is a state. And so those states that we are feeling is in us already. And it's about connecting those nerves and remembering those triggers which have always been there and always have lived in us. And so it goes back to remembering the very nerves or the very atoms that created the thoughts that were left out when we were not connected to it. So basically, the reason why we're not connected to thoughts and forms from another plane is because we're too caught up in our emotions, searching for happiness outside of the self, which is already in happiness and already in total in constant meditation of happiness. And so it's harder to see that, because to see it is to realize that people are only there to remind you of who you are. People are there to remind you of the nature of the planets, to remind you of the transits that are happening right now. People are here to teach you about the elements. People are here to teach you about nature. Nature is the teacher of man. Man integrates with nature to learn his zodiacs. Man learns from nature to see the zoo, which is the chaos, to see the animal inside of him. Man is taught to learn the trees, the leaves, the earth, the grass, the animals, the kingdoms, to understand its form. If you see a bird, the bird will teach you that you must fly, you must grow in your mind. You must connect with a thought, or you must connect with somebody. This is why the ancient Egyptians, or what people now in this day and age have called them Kemetians, or the people of Kem, had certain symbols on the hieroglyphics, like the birds, like Thoth, Hermes, all of these attributes are actual mythologies and connections to forms that are being taught. And yes, the Vedas have held those particular sciences in place to remind us how, and to allow us to connect back to those source of realities, or the makeups which have pulled us away from existence. So the Vedic tradition has the form which still holds the ancient Kemet Egyptian forms of ancient mysteries, which are held in hieroglyphics. They're stored in the Vedas. They're the same thing. Nothing has changed. Nothing really has changed. It's just the language is now Sanskrit, and it holds its tonation in the secret science of the earth, which then allows you to reconnect with with the essence of your true being. And you have to observe like the source of nature in order to understand how that is formed, and why the connection with the different aspects of the kingdoms are actually trying to teach you about yourself. Remember that the physical earth is a reflection of what you're experiencing. Nothing outside of you is not you. Everything outside of you is you. Which is hard to actually integrate, because when you can actually understand that everything outside of you is you, you realize that everyone is interconnected, and everything is trying to search for itself outside of itself, not knowing that it is itself, looking at itself, integrating itself, and feeling itself. The separation is only an illusion because one hasn't tapped into the atom which is in itself, in you, which is dormant. The dormant atoms is you not connecting with the self, which is outside of you, which is the people that you speak to on a day-to-day basis. If you were to interconnect with those things, you would then realize that telepathy becomes the key to all, which allows you to integrate and see and feel everything that is. It is a subtle ingredient of the atom which allows you to interconnect with the ingredients that's around you and in around you. And so when you remind yourself that where you are is still growing spiritually, you will realize that there is still higher states to be cultivated. And I'm still cultivating. You know, every day I'm trying to realize myself. Every day I'm trying to identify who I am and why I'm here. And what I have come here to teach and what others have come here to teach me. Because I know that every part that is embedded inside of me is always going to teach me something that I didn't know or that I didn't recognize in me. Because what I recognize in me is what I already know. But what I don't recognize is me. What I don't recognize in me is what I still need to learn from others. So in other words, when you don't recognize something in someone, in yourself, it's basically just you trying to figure out a part of you which you don't admire, and the recognition of what it is that is inside of you is always going to be experienced through something else. So yeah, so I'm pretty done, but like when you look at the earth, it's inside of you. It's a reality that is already inside of you. It's a matrix. It's a place which is inside of you. It's not outside of you. When you're doing something, it's not outside of you, it's inside of you. Okay, so this is something that I want to bear in mind inside of you, because it's like, as I'm talking, if you've listened to this video up to this point, it's because you've picked up something that was inside of you. And even the very word that I'm saying is because it's connected to you inside of you and has allowed you to notice that inside of you. Otherwise, how can you know without someone showing you? Unless you've gone internally to identify the source of the non-knowingness. And then by going into the source of unknowingness, you know. Because you then figure out what it is that you didn't know. And so that is the shadow, which actually brings you into the sense of what realization, or what we call the states of aligning enlightenment inside of your body, aligning enlightenment inside of you, you know. And enlightenment meaning revelation, to reveal, to realize, to understand a part of you which you didn't see, is everyday enlightenment. Everyday enlightenment is the key to find true enlightenment, to realize you every day and everywhere that you see something which you realize something about you that you didn't know before. So that was my video on my sense of happiness. Just finding the core sense of who you are by just literally observing reality as it is. And by observing reality as it is, you're able to find peace in everything that comes to you. Because, how can I put it? Everything that comes to you is already being felt, because at some point you've attracted it, and you just have to just bear that in mind and realize that. Thank you so much for watching the video, and hope it made a lot of sense. And may happiness fulfill your true nature always in this incarnation.